Well, this is our next installment on the Likamobile build. It's middle of March. We're back from Florida. I spent the winter in Florida and not much work went on since the car is located in New Jersey, and we didn't get a chance to work on anything. So let me give you some updates on what was done just before I left and what's continuing on as I'm back now. Since the car got extended, I had to cut new side panels, and these are the panels. This was a 4 by 10 foot sheet of 1/2 inch ply, finished on both sides, smooth finished on both sides. It was picked up at Industrial Plywood, which is located in Reading, Pennsylvania. They have very large sheets that go up to 12 feet long, sheets of plywood 4 by 12, so I just needed a 4 by 10. To create the panel for the vehicle. I didn't want to have a splice with a 4 by 8, so that's why I bought the 10s. I bought one sheet. I was able to split the sheet down the center. These are not 24 inches, they're less than 24 inches, so I was able to get both sides of the car out of one 4 by 10, and I did pick up another 4 by 8 for all the other areas of the car. But so what I did was I kind of made a paper tracing, and then I laid it over the over the plywood. I cut the plywood in half, so they were 2 feet wide, 10 feet long. I screwed them together, so now I had one piece, and I was able to cut it out, and they're both symmetrical, left and right. They're exactly the same. I think I showed some pictures of that. But what I ended up doing after I cut the shape and sanded the edge, I picked up this half round beading, which I also got out in Lancaster, Pennsylvania from the Amish. It's a wood material, and it makes a real nice beading. It's stapled and glued in place. It makes a nice beading to finish off the edges of the plywood, and also it's on the top edge right here and the back edge, so all the edges are finished off, so it makes it look really professional instead of just a flat piece of plywood. And also the bottom edge is done the same. And it's very flexible. Let me turn it so you can see it. This is the whole side panel. This is 9 feet long. It's very flexible, which is really nice. And I was able to curve it around here. And also where the control levers come through the side of the vehicle, I was able to bend it here, which is a very steep bend, and also bend it on the inside, which is a steep bend. What I did with this is I did soak them, and I pushed them in place. I held them there, let it dry, and then took it out, and then glued and stapled it in place. So that was done. The same here. These are nice bends. These I didn't have to do wet. I was able to do it cold. Let me move it over so you can see it. So that came out real nice. One of the things that I really wanted to show you on this piece of plywood was originally when the car was built, what they did was they screwed from the inside of the frame through the plywood, not actually through it, but into the plywood with wood screws. And the problem is, once you assembled the car, you couldn't get the panels off anymore, because you couldn't access it. The boiler was in place, or the tanks were in place, and you couldn't unscrew it. So if you had to work on the car, sometimes it's convenient to take the panels off and work on the car, but that wasn't possible the way they had it assembled. So I took it to the next step, and what I ended up doing is removing the panels on the original shorter version of the car, and I actually drilled through the panels and caught the holes where they had, and I put 1/4-20 studs in with acorn nuts, brass acorn nuts, and it really made the car look very nice. It made it look very authentic, because the acorn nuts kind of went with the particular year of the car. When I made these new panels, what I wanted to do was I wanted to create an even easier way of doing it. So again, I did drill through the wood and into the frame, and that all lines up, everything lines up. I held it in place with clamps, drilled through, and then tapped the frame to take 1/4-20, the same arrangement. But one of the things I noticed on the original panels when the car was short was when you tighten I did have brass washers behind the acorn nuts, and when you tighten it down, you cause the depression of the wood, and it actually caused the paint to crack a little bit. So I decided to take it again to the next level, since I was doing the car over again, was I made these furls, and I'll give you a close-up. But what I did was I took a piece of 3/8 copper tubing, and I cut the copper tubing just a little over a 1/2 inch in size. That's the copper, that's 3/8. The 1/4 20 fits right in the center of it. And then I put it in a flaring tool, and this is the flaring tool I use. Everybody will recognize what this tool is. I put it in the flaring tool, and I flared the copper with the flaring tool, and that gave me an angle, and I wanted it flat. So after I took it out of the flaring tool, I flipped it over to the other side of the flaring tool, which doesn't have a bevel on it, and put it back in again. And I took a ball peen hammer and flattened out the flare to make it a flat. So the end result is I end up with a nice furl that's flat. There's no bevel on it. That's the original piece that I used, and then I formed that. And what I did was I drilled the holes in the panel. They were originally 1/4 inch holes. I'm going to try to give you a close-up of this, but I drilled the holes in the panel throughout the whole panel, 3/8 in size. And the back side, I just kind of put I drilled with a step bit, and I have it right here. I used this step bit right here, and I just dissed it a little bit, so when I pushed these furls inside, I didn't chip the back of the panel away. I wanted it to not chip away. So I just used a step drill just to open up the back side a little bit. So when I inserted the furls in place, it didn't cause a chip in the back side of the panel. And then I pushed the furls in place at that point in time. And what I did, it was a tight fit, so they stayed. And then what I did was I laid the panels on the concrete floor, flipped them over like this, and on the back side of the panel, let me get this piece. I took a piece of some scrap I had around, and I put it underneath, on top of the furl edge, like that. And I took this tool, which is a flaring tool for copper tubing, and if you notice, the furl kind of just about flush with the back side of the panel. And I put the flaring tool in place, and I gave it a couple of hard whacks. That expanded the back side of the furl. So now the furls don't fall out. They're locked in place, and they're all flush. There's nothing sticking out. And what will happen is when this screws to the frame of the car, and I tighten things down, I'm not tightening on the wood, but I'm in fact tightening on the furls, which will stop the paint from cracking where the furls are. And this is again the panel. That will be done to all the panels, and it also gives it a very authentic look. It's copper. This panel is going to be painted, so probably some of the copper is going to get painted, but it doesn't make any difference because I'm still using some brass washers over the top of it, and it will be fine. You won't notice it. Even if the paint chips off, the copper shows through, which makes it look very authentic. I may even take the paint off of each furl so it does show, but you're not going to see it because there's going to be brass washers covering the furl. So that's the last update. I will post more updates. Let me back up. I will post more updates as we progress along now that it's springtime, and I'll be doing a lot more work on the car, and you'll be seeing the progress. So that's it until the next video.